Moving on, this is... No. I had Aston Villa in 8th. How's it going, everyone? I hope you're doing well. The 23-24 Premier League season has come to a close, and to round it up on this channel, we're going to be taking a look at my Premier League predictions, talking about what I got right, and more concerningly, what I got wrong, because I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit more of the latter. But now, without further ado, let's take a look. Ooh, I'm really not looking forward to this, but here we are. Let's go. Sheffield United, I think, have started actually quite well. Oh my gosh. What? Sheffield United have started quite well. What are we, 4 seconds in? Oh, okay. I don't know what I've seen to make me say that, but it must have been something quite impressive. Let's see what I do with it. I like their transfer business, but I still don't think it's going to be enough to take them out of the bottom 3. And Luton. I don't see it. Oh dear. Right, so the Sheffield United thing, I don't think I quite got very correct. They've conceded over 100 goals, and yeah, they didn't exactly do fantastic, did they? 16 points in the entirety of the season, and we'll have a Premier League table next to all of this so you can see what I'm comparing it to. Luton. Unfortunately, I really just don't see it. They can't really score goals. They're conceding goals for fun. Defensively, they look a little bit lax, and I just don't think they're going to make it. Moving on. Okay, so Luton, I was kind of on the correct lines, if you want to give me that. They did look defensively very lax. The quality just wasn't there. And for all the emphasis and for all the energy they wanted to put into it, they just didn't have the quality on the other side of the pitch either. They couldn't really score too many goals. They were missing chance after chance, and they were conceding far too many. So we kind of got that right? Make it. Moving on, we can see Wolves, Everton and Burnley. I thought Burnley would do far better than they have. Now, albeit, they have had some difficult fixtures, but I think they're being way too naive. I don't really see the goals, and at the same time, I think the tactics need to completely switch. Hold on, we might be onto something. I think we nailed Burnley quite spot on. So, they were really naive in the way they defended, and Vincent Kompany refused to change his tactics. The quality of the player just wasn't there for them to build out of the back, and they caused a lot of their own problems. We might have called something here. I think with Burnley, they do need to start shutting up shop. They need to make it themselves difficult to beat. And I'm not sure Vincent Kompany can do that. And if he wants to do that, I don't know whether he has the personnel to be able to do it in the short period of time that he has between matches. And for that reason, I actually think I've got Burnley down. And I might have called something. Now, I'm not reveling in the fact that Burnley got relegated. I feel very sorry for all the clubs that got relegated, but they just didn't put up enough of a fight. And I think we called that quite well. Admittedly, the points and the positioning aren't going to be exact or accurate, but the general terms around the team, I think we got quite correct. And I think I've got Wolves in 16th. Wolves have really impressed me under Gary O'Neill. It was looking extremely bleak, and I mean really bleak, like instant relegation bleak. Okay, for Wolves that was a bit hyperbolic, but really there was a massive negativity around the club at the time that the season started. You had Lopetegui leaving, refusing to train the squad. You had uncertainty over the manager. Gary O'Neill comes in, but they've had to sell some players. Raul Jimenez leaves. You've got a number of players exiting the door. Ruben Neves ended up leaving. Mateus Nunes ended up going to Manchester City. It was a massive, massive issue, and the job that Gary O'Neill has done is nothing short of remarkable. Much higher than the 16th place that I had them. But Wolves seems to have stabilised. They've got energy, they've got power, they've got a bit of presence. They still can't score goals. No, they still can't. No. But they look quite resolute, and in midfield, once they get a little bit more time together, I do think they will create opportunities. Everton. So I think just before we go on to Everton, I think we got Wolves quite spot on. Their defensive solidity was something of a structure for them to build upon. Midfield was a big, big plus. João Gomez, you have Lamina, and then you have the players going forwards. He got a tune out of Hwang Hee-chan and Matheus Cunha, who obviously ended up getting injured towards the latter stages of the season. But really, him, along with Pedro Neto, Ait Nouri, they started to create and make some goals. They didn't do badly at all. And as I said before, did much better in the 16th place I put them. But the general air around the club, I think we got quite right. I still think we'll survive by the skin of their teeth. I really like the signing of Beto, but letting Alex Iwobi go was criminal for me. Criminal. So for that reason, I think Everton just survive. I think Wolves will be okay. So Everton are an interesting one, because if you actually give them the points back, they actually end up being a lot higher than they actually ended up turning out. Everton did a remarkable job of keeping so many clean sheets. I believe they ended with 13 or 12 clean sheets this season. A remarkable job for a club that's quote-unquote fighting for relegation. Wolves will be okay, and Burnley drop down. Moving on, we have Bournemouth, Forest and Fulham. And this is where it goes. This is where it goes. If we look at the position where Nottingham Forest are, this is where it goes, pear-shaped. Fulham, all of these teams I think are absolutely fine. Nottingham Forest have really shown themselves to be a good force away from home. Oh, why? It was all going so well. Nottingham Forest have shown themselves to be a real force away from home. They were terrible last season, but with their counter-attacking ability, and you know how much we've been talking about in our videos about Nottingham Forest and their ability in the transition to be able to punish teams who come onto them. Forest, yes, the transition. Yes, I remember talking about Anthony Elanga and Morgan Gibbs-White, and then you got Hudson-Odoi on the other side and their ability to really go forwards with pace once they've turned over the ball with the transition. Yes, I remember that. But everything else went wrong. Literally everything else, both on the pitch, off the pitch. It wasn't a good look for them, and they ended up finishing 17th. Not fantastic, but 3-point difference. Yeah, we might have gotten that one a little bit wrong. Forest have been doing great. Fulham are a concern to me, and their idea of dropping down is quite there because of the lack of Mitrovic. However, adding Iwobi into that side, I think really does give them a solidity, but I'm struggling to see where they score goals past Raul Jimenez. I put a lot of emphasis on Iwobi generally in this video, and I'm not entirely sure why. He's a good player, don't get me wrong, but he hasn't exactly pulled up any trees at Fulham, and I'm not necessarily sure that Everton missed him all too much, so don't really know what happened there, but generally, I think we were okay with Fulham. They had a pretty average season. Marco Silva is slowly starting to put together a good repertoire of keeping teams in the league and playing some decent football. I think Fulham have had a good campaign. I just don't quite see it. They're going to need a real big team performance to be able to push through. Does Nottingham Forest go above them? I'm not so sure, but Forest really are building something. Bournemouth Forest really are building something. Oh dear, that one's going to haunt me. That one is going to haunt me. Ooh. Bournemouth are going to need to take time to really adapt themselves to the Premier League and the way they want to play, and so that's why I've kept them in 15th. Moving on, finally, a plus point. So we got Bournemouth's position quite wrong, but the general air around the club was quite correct. Andoni Iraola coming in for Gary O'Neill really did set a benchmark for what was expected of Bournemouth this season. They struggled towards the start of the season, so I don't think it was out of the realms of possibility to think that they could have finished in around 15th. The football that they started playing was really good, and they managed to get some proper scalps. Andoni Iraola managed to get a playing side into this Bournemouth team, and I really do think they've done a fantastic job. But overall, they gave him time, and that's the crucial point. Moving on, we have Crystal Palace, West Ham United and Brentford in 10th. Crystal Palace, I think, have done a sensational job of continuing the way they want to. West Ham, Palace are an interesting one, because if you think about Palace and think about everything they wanted to do, they sacked Roy Hodgson, they brought in Glasner, and they've obviously done fantastic, but up until that point, not great. West Ham have really kicked on and started the season, and I could put them a little bit higher. And you know what? I think I will. I think I will put West Ham one place higher. Brentford, I've been really impressed with. And okay, so Brentford is an unfortunate one. Ivan Toney missing for us of the season, of course, but also the injuries, Visser, everyone. It's just been horrendous. And it's massively dented the way that this Brentford team can go forwards. Never should sleep on Brentford. However, the goals are always going to be an issue when you don't have a player like Ivan Toney in the side. Can they share? The goals are also going to be an issue where you miss Ivan Toney and the rest of the forwards that are meant to be playing for the club. Can they share the goals out amongst themselves enough to be able to compensate for the lack of goal-scoring prowess that Toney has? Remember, he comes back, but I don't think he'll be at Brentford in January. West Ham United have been brilliant, and they've made some fantastic signings. However, when we talk about the way that West Ham are going to play, they're in the Europa League, and eventually their attention will shift. So I think they'll stay around 10th. West Ham ended up being around that position, but I think we got to it in a strange way. Yes, they did focus on the Europa League, but they fell off a cliff towards the latter stages of the season, picking up only, I want to say, 2 wins out of something like 7. It was a really, really poor end to the season for West Ham, and obviously that's ended up with them parting with manager David Moyes, going for Julen Lopetegui, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But generally, from a West Ham season, I don't know how to call it. They were okay, but at the same time, it's not terrible. It's a strange one to me. And 10th, which is far better than their previous finish, I might add. Moving on, this is... No. I had Aston Villa in 8th. All right, what have you got for me? We had Brighton, Hove Albion, Aston Villa, Newcastle United. I'm quite happy with the way Newcastle are. I do think they're going to... I'm quite happy with the way Newcastle are as well. I believe we got that one correct. Don't move him. Don't move them. Please. Struggle in the Champions League somewhat. I think they could get out the group, but with their attention shifted towards the mainstay competition and the reason they were really competing for European football, I do think it's going to mean that their performances in the Premier League are going to suffer somewhat. Aston Villa, okay, so we kind of got Newcastle on point. The injuries we didn't expect, but we thought they'd have a good crack at Europe, and probably, barring a bit of a dodgy decision in Europe, they probably should have managed to get at least Europa League football. Maybe even gotten out of the group. They gave it a good go. And when it comes to the injuries, that's what really took its toll. Is that because of the extra football they've had to play? Is that down to the amount of games they've had to play generally over the last 2 seasons? Maybe. But the position-wise, I'll take. I don't think are necessarily going to do as well as everyone thinks. I think Unai Emery's high line is, it's eventually going to really come up against them and is going to cause so many different problems for them. That being said, they have quality in midfield, they have quality up front. Okay, so we got the high line kind of correct. Kind of. It didn't cause them ultimately problems, but it was a thing. Oh, is this one of the worst calls I've ever made? I think they're going to be absolutely fine for the most part, but a trip through Europe, albeit, and you took all of that and made it 9th? With all seriousness, I do think that nobody could have foreseen the absolute brilliant season that Aston Villa ended up having. Ollie Watkins getting 30-plus goal involvements. You've got the likes of John McGinn being reformed into a new hybrid midfield role. Then you've got the keeper in Martinez, the back four, which has had injuries. Overall, they've done fantastic, and Unai Emery needs to be given so much credit. And easier one than some other teams. I think Aston Villa are just going to drop that little bit. They did not drop. Newsflash, they did not drop. Brighton and Hove Albion have been unbelievably impressive, I might add. And that means that they go forwards up the table. I actually think they could finish above Newcastle. And this is the tough one for me. Do I put Brighton ahead of... Newcastle? Or do I put Newcastle ahead of Brighton? Remember, Brighton have Europa League football. They have something to really consider. It's a tough one. I don't know. Newcastle have a very good squad. Eddie Howe, was he overperforming with that squad? Have they put enough into their team to be able to propel them forwards? And then there's Europe. Wait. Have they put enough into their team to be able to propel them forwards? I'm kind of alluding to squad depth here, or at least that's how I'm going to read it. I don't think that Newcastle had enough squad depth to be able to cope with all of the competitions and all the games they had to play. Don't get me wrong, the injury list they had would devastate any side. That's not what I'm saying. But generally, from the get-go, I do think they were lacking in certain areas. I'm going to have it the other way around. I just think Eddie Howe, this Newcastle side, their ability to go and spend in January, possibly if they need to, Brighton with Europa League football, I wonder how that squad and their squad depth, or lack thereof, will be affected by Europa League football. It'd be very interesting. Perhaps I'm doing Brighton a little bit dirty. Okay, so squad depth again. Brighton don't have too much of it. We're getting onto a trend here. We just didn't move Brighton far enough down the table. Brighton finished in 11th. Not too bad of a campaign when you consider where they're coming from. De Zerbi obviously leaving the club. Overall, not too bad. Very interesting. Perhaps I'm doing Brighton a little bit dirty there as well, because they have the highest XG in the league. They are playing unbelievable football. It's a tough one. I'm sorry, Brighton fans. I just don't know. I'm sorry. Moving on, we have 6th, 5th and 4th. Oh, this needs a shake-up, doesn't it? Okay, right. Chelsea. Let's talk Chelsea, because they haven't started well. Be careful what you say here. Be careful what you say. They haven't started well. I thought they would. I really thought they would. I've seen them in pre-season, and I thought they would really start to kick on, but there seem to be more problems there for Chelsea. They're not really scoring too many goals. Mauricio Pochettino has some kind of an obsession with playing Ben Chilwell as a left winger when he has other left wingers, like £89 million Mykhailo Mudryk. So that's very, very strange. So Chelsea have to come out of 4th for me. Tottenham Hotspur, as Brighton and Hove Albion are doing as well, are playing absolutely sensational football. And for that reason, I actually think with no European football to contend with the harmony that's in that squad, and Heung-min Son being that false 9, as well as the likes of James Maddison and Basuma playing in that side, I think Tottenham could go 4th. Manchester, we haven't done too bad here. We noticed the issue that Mauricio Pochettino had with playing Colwill at left back. I understand the reason why he did it. It just didn't work, and I think everyone could have seen that. We then talked about Tottenham and their ability to really progress the ball forwards, the new style of football that Ange put into that Tottenham side. Not bad at all. Not bad. I'm quite happy with that. They didn't get 4th, but really they should have done, shouldn't they? Honestly. Manchester United are a shambles at this current point in time. They have a ridiculous amount of injuries. They have Reguilon, who is on loan, but the rest of them are injured. They don't really have a decent centre-back pairing. Previously, they were playing Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire. They didn't have a centre-back pairing for the entirety of the season, so make of that what you will. Then you have a look at their right wing slot. They don't really have a right winger, especially with the confrontation that Jadon Sancho has had with Erik ten Hag, and I just don't see... That didn't end well for him, did it? Jadon Sancho is currently in the Champions League final, and Erik ten Hag is fighting for his life. I just don't see where the goals come from. I don't see where the harmony comes from. And then you have the addition of Champions League football. They're going to be absolutely ripped to shreds by Bayern Munich. And for that reason, we called that one. We're going to take that one. They did get ripped to shreds by Bayern Munich, and they did not do well in the Champions League at all. Absolutely embarrassed. Please, go on. And for that reason, they dropped down into 6th. And they are very fortunate that they are not lower, because they look a shambles at the moment. Chelsea, I think, will stabilise under Mauricio Pochettino, especially going into the January period when they don't have as many games as the other clubs. And they will just maintain their position in 5th. And that could be a Champions League spot, depending on how the other teams do in Europe. Moving on, it wasn't a Champions League spot, but just a word on Chelsea. They managed to bring back their season somewhat and get Europa League football, which is more or less around about where I put them. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. Moving on, we have our top 3 here. We have Arsenal, Liverpool and Manchester City. Do I want to change anything? I don't think I do. Arsenal really impressed. Change it. Arsenal really impressed me against Manchester United, especially with the way they managed to get that win in the 90th minute. They were fantastic. However, Liverpool's strike force is absolutely terrifying, and if Darwin Núñez is going to start to come to the forefront, I really do think that they will be unstoppable, really. Defensively, they do concern me, which is why I don't think they're going to really make a charge for Man City and that title. But Liverpool are there or thereabouts. Their midfield presence has been rebuilt. Ryan Gravenberch is an absolute star. Then you have a look at Alexis McAllister and Dominic Szoboszlai, a midfield trio of excellence. Front 3 is fantastic. Mo Salah, Luis Diaz, Diogo Jota. Then you've got Cody Gakpo to be able to link everything up. Liverpool look fantastic. Defensively, there are a couple of question marks, but generally... Okay, so on Liverpool, I think we were kind of correct. They were running hot for a lot of the season, and a lot of people, I think, have now come to the conclusion that they were punching above their weight somewhat. The midfield trio didn't exactly have the balance that I thought it would have going into the season. The front 3 did score a load of goals. Mo Salah's form ended up dropping off a little bit, and then you've got the likes of Darwin Núñez missing some really crucial chances. I do think he's improved, and I think he will get better with this Liverpool side, but he's still not the finished article, and he's still a bit raw, which is something that has ended up hurting Liverpool later on. Arsenal had an unbelievable campaign, much better than I thought they would, and I put them in 3rd. They were fantastic, the best defence in the league. They ended up being one of the best sides going forwards. They were brilliant, and in the end, proved my prediction of third to be quite hilarious. But generally, they're there or thereabouts. I don't think they're going to quite challenge Man City, but they will be the closest team to do so. Arsenal, and there it is. I was afraid I would say that. Yeah, so Arsenal ended up being the team to challenge Man City. Liverpool were there until about 3 or 4 weeks to go, maybe a little bit more. Arsenal did brilliant. Man City managed to come back into it, and it's one of the games between either West Ham or Aston Villa that seriously cost Arsenal the title. Arsenal, I think, Champions League and Europe will really get in their way. They might not think it at the moment, but I really do think they're going to need to make a decision. And in previous times when they've had to make that decision, it hasn't gone well for them. I don't think it'll be a disaster by any stretch of the imagination. I do think they'll be quite close to Liverpool, but I don't think they'll come second. And, of course, we have... I don't think they'll come second. I really do put myself in it, don't I? I don't think they'll come second. No. Yeah, so, I'm just going to hold my hands up on that one. I just didn't see the quality or the massive improvement in this Arsenal side to be able to go forwards. Of course, now I've seen the light, and I can see them being a massive, massive force next season. And as for the European competitions, I think they wanted to go far, and I think they wanted to do well in it. But obviously, they played a Bayern Munich side who really tried to up the ante. And in the end, I think Arsenal will be quite disappointed with what they did in Europe. As for the league, they can only be proud. Of course, we have Manchester City coming top of this Premier League table. Really quick, let's go through the table and just see if just on Man City real quick, let's just bring that back a touch. Just on Manchester City, who are an absolute juggernaut of a side. What Pep Guardiola is doing with this team, with this squad, is remarkable. I cannot believe it. 4 Premier League titles in a row. And the big question is, of course, could it be 5 next season's Premier League table? Really quick, let's go through the table and just see if I want to make any extra changes. I think I'm quite happy with a lot of the teams and a lot of the positions. This Brighton one is hurting me. It really is. This Brighton one is hurting me. This could go one of two ways. Either I end up putting Brighton higher, which makes me look more ridiculous, or I put them lower. What is going to happen? I just don't see the squad depth. Or do I? Do I do that? Do we do that? Is that realistic? Brighton play some of the best football in the Premier League and arguably some of the best football in Europe. Is that realistic? How far are Newcastle going to go in the Champions League? I believe they can get out of the group, but if they get out of the group and they go into the knockout rounds, that's going to be more football, and it's also going to be more times that they're going to need to rotate their squad for both Premier League and Champions League action. Manchester United, could they go 8th with the way that they're playing? Wait, we might have saved it. Hold on, we might have saved it. This Brighton shout is horrendous, but we might have saved it. There is no harmony in that squad. They barely have any players. And then you've got the increased expectancy on Rasmus Højlund. It's tough. And there it goes. Why do I do this? It's tough. I just think Newcastle will be stretched. I think Brighton will be stretched as well. It's getting worse. What am I doing? I'm going to stick Brighton in 8th. I think they've climbed one place. I'm still a little concerned about the squad depth overall. But they play fantastic football. I'm sorry, Brighton fans. I'm sorry. And generally, this is my Premier League table. These are the final Premier League predictions. But my question to you is... Okay, we don't need to be talking about questions right now. So that was my Premier League table. Overall, we got a lot wrong. I think we got a lot more wrong than we did last year. But it's all a learning curve, and that's what this is all about. It's about putting a positive spin on what has been a horrendous amount of predictions. And now it's time to talk about a question, because my question to you is, what were your predictions? Tell me what you got right and tell me what you got wrong in the comment section below before we go back and do this all again before the start of the Premier League season. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please let me know your predictions. I need to feel a little bit better, please. This was terrible. Good grief. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you ever so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.